All right, so in continuing our discussion of graphing trig functions, today we'll be focusing on graphing the secant function, just like yesterday, where we learned how to graph, not y equals, where we learned that cosecant, to graph cosecant, right, you had to graph the sine wave, right, and then you did some things today to graph the secant wave, just like that, just like yesterday. To graph the secant wave, you have to graph the cosine wave. Okay, so this is a good review of how to graph a cosine wave, and then you just add a couple steps to get cosecant. All right, so here's how we do this. So we have our example: y equals 3 secant of x over 2. Right, so our amplitude is 3. Our period length, well, instead of doing this, let's rewrite this, because remember, we're graphing cosine first, so I'm going to change this to y equals 3 cosine of x over 2. All right, now my amplitude for my cosine wave is 3. My period length is, remember, for cosine, it's always 2 pi divided by the number with x, which is, in this case, is half. So 2 pi divided by half is actually 4. All right, now to get our 4 points along the x-axis with 0, right, I have to take 4 pi and divide it by 4. When I do that, I get pi. So what does that mean? That means all my points along the x-axis are going to go up pi units each time. Okay, so I have 0, I have pi, I have 2 pi, I have 3 pi, and I have 4 pi. All right, now unlike sine that starts at the axis, or at the origin, right? Remember, cosine always starts at your amplitude, which in this case is 3. So I'm going to start way up at y equals 3. At the first point over, cosine crosses the x-axis. Okay, at 2 pi, the next point over, I'm at the negative amplitude, so negative down here. At the next point, I'm back at the x-axis, and then the last point, I come back up to my original amplitude, which in this case is 3. Okay, so if I connect it, the graph looks like that. Okay, now just like yesterday, where once we graphed sine, we looked for where the graph crossed the x-axis, and we drew vertical asymptotes. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so the graph crosses the x-axis here and here. Okay, now each of these points, you cut the graph. All right, so when you cut the graph there, this point from here to here, it now floats and flips. Okay, so now that goes up like that, right? This part from here to here flips down, so you get that, and then this point from here to there flips up. Now, let me redraw that because it looks like it crosses. So if I continue that line, it ends up like that. Now it does look a little weird, right? This point would continue on if you continue graphing, right? So it does have the same, it looks very, very similar to cosecant, right? You have the u's going up and down on either side. It's just when you graph just one period length, it looks kind of weird like this, where you have 2 sides, half sides of a parabola, and then one full on the bottom. Okay, now so let's review. So the blue, I'll make this note, the blue line are the graph y equals 3 secant of x over 2. Okay, so I'll come down here. So we'll kind of go through this all again real quick. So you have y equals 2 secant of x, right? So I'm going to rewrite this in terms of, instead of secant, in terms of cosine, and then once I graph that, then I can cut my graph and flip it. Right, so y equals 2 cosine of x. My amplitude is 2. My period length is 2 pi divided by the number with in front of the x, which is 1. So my period length is 2 pi. Now to get my 4 points, that's 0. Knowing 0 is one of them. To get the other 4 points, I have to take 2 pi divided by 4, so I get pi over 2. Right, so when I go to graph, I know that each time I go over along the x-axis, my graph is going to go up pi over 2 units. So come here, I have 0, I have pi over 2, I have 2 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2 reduces to pi, and then I have 3 pi over 2, and then I have 4 pi over 2, which 4 divided by 2 is 2 pi. Alright, that's how you get those. Now you start at your amplitude. So it's positive, so I start up here. The next point over along the x-axis, I cross the x-axis, and then at the next point at pi, I'm going to be at my negative point, and then 3 pi over 2, I come back to my x-axis, and then at my last point, I'm back where I started at y equals 2. So if I connect, it looks something like that. Now in blue, I'll draw my vertical asymptotes everywhere where my graph of the cosine wave crosses the x-axis. Okay, and then remember, those are the points where you're going to cut your graph. And once you cut that graph, then you flip the black line, you reflect it. Okay, so I'm going to reflect it up. Right, this part gets reflected down. Right, and then this part gets reflected up. Okay, and they tend, each arm of the thing tends towards the those vertical asymptotes that you highlighted, but they never ever cross. Okay, so the blue lines, again, are the graph y equals 2 secant of x. Okay, hopefully this helps. If it doesn't, please let me know, either through email or through comment. Thanks.